Hello, myself Dr. Vijay Chandra Jayala welcomes you to today's session related to the AWS Cloud Computing. AWS Cloud Computing, we are going to do or discuss related to the scenarios. Now it is a scenario based environment we are going to discuss related to the real time environments. The scenario based real time environments, the first scenario which we are going to discuss as part of introduction to cloud computing is hosting a learning management system LMS. This is related to the scenario 1. So SR University want to host learning management system LMS on AWS support online classes through thousands of students. So this particular learning management system should be for the sake of the online, where the videos or the data which produced by the lecturers, professors should be stored through AWS servers, and it should be distributed to the students wherever they are. So here the instance which we are going to select for this particular scenario is EC2. The EC2 instance type will be recommended for hosting the AWS, holding the LMS containing its contents that are handle the high traffic during exam sections. So now we are going to discuss the scalability and high availability of EC2 instance for the sake of traffic identification. So the load balancer, auto scaling as well as load balancer are the two different components which are even used in spite of EC2. Why? Because we are going to check the fault tolerance of the LMS as well as the performance. To improve the performance and to check the fault tolerance, we are going to use the load balancing as well as the elastic auto scaling as well as the load balancing. Now comes to the as part of the query question. So the next step in this particular problem is disaster recovery. You have to set up a disaster recovery plan for this LMS which is hosted on EC2 to ensure that the minimum downtime is in case of the any failure. So here you can use snapshots, cross region replications and multi-AZ setups. Now here what we are going to use for this particular problem is, first is the EC2, that is an instance. Then to check the performance as well as the fault tolerance, we are using the auto scaling, and even we are using the elastic load balancer. And the next thing is related to the disaster management. So to overcome this particular disaster management, we are going to use snapshot. Then comes to the cross region application and multi-AZ setups. Now related to the solution we are going to discuss. The solution is here hosting an LMS. The first step is you are going to create an instance type. That means EC2 instance will be recommended, where we are going to use the web application tier that is general purpose instance when you are creating, and the series is burstable instances. Then comes to the scaling, spot instances, and use on demand instances. Then the database tier is RDS, relational database service, or you can use the Amazon Aurora. It's better to use RDS. Then comes to the scalability ensuring. You are going to ensure that RDS is related to Aurora, and vertical scaling where you are going to discuss related to the resizing of the database instances and load increase as well as the load increases. So here we are using the RDS with the vertical scaling option. So you are using the RDS with the vertical scaling option so that you can verify whether if it is not enough, the size of the database is not enough, automatically it can increase the size. For the sake of it, you are going to use vertical scaling, which will allow you resizing the size of the database instances as the load is increasing. So here in this particular problem related to the database scalability, what you are going to use is the RDS, and in this particular RDS you are going to verify the rescaling the schedule of the RDS, that is related to the load increases. As per the load increases, the database schedule will be increased. Then comes to the read replicas where it enables the read replicas for offloading read traffic, where especially during the high demand periods like exams. So here at the time of exams only the students will read from different regions, different places, and the load on the particular system will be very high, and remaining time the load on the LMS will be very low. To overcome it, we are going to use resizing the database, that is by using the vertical scaling. Then comes to the write scalability, that will be used the multi-master, where you are going to write the operations for the sake of the auto scaling. So in RDS we are going to even enable the RDS auto scaling for storage and read replicas. So you are going to enhance the storage as well as read replicas for the sake of the auto scaling. Then comes to scalability and high availability. So now designing for traffic strikes, where auto scaling group ASG. So now you are going to configure an auto scaling group to add or remove EC2 instances automatically based on the demand, that is CPU utilization, network traffic. So based on the CPU utilization and network traffic, you are going to use the auto scaling group for the configuration of add or remove EC2 instances automatically based on the demand. Then comes to the scale out and scaling. So you have to do scale out or the scale in for the sake of the elasticity. That means as per the requirement you can scale in or you can scale out. So next comes to these all can be possible with the application load balancer. As part of elastic load balancer, we are going to use application load balancer to distribute traffic across the EC2 instances to the multiple zones. There are different number of zones are available, where among these multiple zones we can communicate through the application load balancer, and frequently the health checks should be done, and the route traffic only will precise about these healthy instances. So you have to rule for routing the traffic patterns, that is API requests and static content. So these all will be taken into the consideration. Then comes to the verification of the performance as well as the fault tolerance. For this particular project or particular scenario, you have to verify the performance. This will be done by using the dynamic traffic distribution and optimize the request handling. So here you are going to check the static content with Amazon CloudFront to resource the load on EC2. So here the memory in the caching layer using elastic cache for the frequently accessed database queries will consider as the performance. Then comes to the fault tolerance. So here the fault tolerance, here you are going to deploy the instances across the multiple availability zones. So different availability zones will be there within a particular region that considered as the fault tolerance, where you are going to use elastic IPs to maintain the consistent IP address in the case of instances failures. Then comes to the disaster recovery. So here you are going to set up the disaster recovery plan where multi-AZ deployment, that is deploys EC2 instances and EC2 instances as well as RDS in multi-AZ environment. Then comes to the backups and snapshots. You are going to take the backup to further disaster recovery, or if you find any type of the problems, the backup will help us. So here we are going to use a backup and snapshot. So automate the EBS snapshots for elastic instance data, where you are going to store the snapshots in Amazon S3. You are going to also use the Amazon relational database service where automated backups will be taken, where multiple snapshots of the database will be included. Then comes to the cross-region replication. Cross-region replication, where the replications are EBS snapshots, database backups and static assets from the S3 to another AWS region using the S3 cross-region replication and AWS backup. Then comes to the failure strategy. So the DNS routing and other network related will be concentrated by the route 53, and the architecture is the pilot light architecture for the security purpose in the secondary region to rapid recovery. So the overall structure of this particular problem, we are going to have the one concept is related to the front end, that is a web application layer where auto scaling EC2 instances behind an ELB. Then comes to the cloud front to catch and deliver the static assets. Then comes to the back end where the database layer will be considered. Then comes to the in this particular backend, that means the database where the tables will be used. There we are going to use the relational database service, that is the RDS. So we are going to use the RDS in multi-AZ setup with read replicas. Then comes to the disaster recovery. The disaster recovery will be done by using the EBS snapshots and route 53 for the DNS failures. So these all are the different AWS components which we are going to use for the sake of the identifying the architecture to the problem, to solve the particular problem which we discussed here. So the problem is related to the LMS, that is learning management system. This particular learning management system we are going to implement in the SR University. So we need some space to implement this particular learning management system. For that purpose we are going to use EC2 instance, and to maintain the load, since the students at the time of the exam they will open this learning management system frequently. So to avoid the traffic at the last moment or to crash of the server, we are going to use elastic load balancer, and different regions we are going to select, and we are going to use different servers, and we are going to shift the data from one server to the another server, and we are also using the auto scaling methods so that the load will be scaled as per the requirement. High and low will be as per the requirement, and finally we are going to verify the disaster management also. That means we are going to secure our project with the disaster management. In if any disaster management problems occurs, we are going to solve it by using the route 53 and other disaster management techniques. So this is all about the scenario based explanation regarding to the learning mechanism of AWS LMS, learning mechanism maintenance of the learning mechanism system. So here the architecture is defined as of basically three. One is related to the front end, that is web application layer. The second is related to the database, that is the database layer, which is at the back end, where the database we are going to use the ODS, and finally for the security purpose we are using the disaster management techniques. By this we complete the scenario 1. Then comes we are going to discuss related to the scenario 2. The scenario 2 is related to the research data processing, that is related to the SR University research development, which needs to process the large data of scientific research using machine learning methodologies. So here the research data processing, what are your requirements? So as usual, we need a concept known as the compute, we need storage, then access control. The first is the compute. For the compute we are using here is the EC2 instance. The EC2 instance we are using for the sake of the compute, where the compute instance takes like training machine learning models and cost serving mechanisms that will apply the workload using the spot instances. Then comes to the storage needs, where we are going to discuss regarding what is the requirement of the storage for this particular research processing, where different types of the data related to the journals will be here. So to avoid that, we are going to use the storage needs, that is the research data exceeds 1 TB and needs to accessed with low latency, that will be elastic block storage, elastic file storage, and S3 simple storage service of the data storage. Then comes to why would you use this particular processed securely and to ensure the durability. So here the access control will be done by using the security groups as well as the ARM rules. So here how you are going to ensure that only the authorized researchers are using this particular EC2 instances and data sets. This is a major question related to the security, which we will find when you are discussing related to the research management concept. So here how would you ensure that only authorized researchers handle access to EC2 instance and data sets. So here the authorized access is ARM rules, and as well as the data set which we are going to give the security is based on the security groups. Then comes to the scenario, how you are going to elaborate this particular concept that comes under the describing of scenario. So here I am going to describe this particular scenario based on the solutions of particular scenario based on the first concept, which is known as the compute power. So here it is recommended as EC2 instance types for compute instance which will be which have the intensive tasks that is related to the machine learning models, where the GPU instance will be taken place, so that at high speed the deep learning methodologies as well as the machine learning methodologies will be implemented. So here the compute optimized instances will be used GPU acceleration. So when you use the Jupyter notebook, there they will ask you the GPU acceleration or TPU acceleration. So here in the same way, when we are implementing the other methods to calculate the research related data processing, we are using, if we are using the deep learning or machine learning artificial intelligence based methodologies, automatically you are going to use the GPU acceleration through the web servers, AWS web server. Then comes to the cost saving measures using the spot instances, that is the spot instances that will be leveraged up to 90% on costs of non-credentials or fault tolerant, which is equal to the machine learning jobs, so that the spot instances will be identified on depend for the critical workload. So here these workloads majorly depend upon the on-demand instances, and they are reusable and they will be reliable to this particular environment, and it will be stored in that particular on-demand instances, and it will be retrieved as per the usage, and based on the purchase plans, these compute saving plans, we are going to get the benefit in the case of the amount which we are using. Then comes to the storage needs, that comes under the storage selection. There are majorly three different types of storage selections we can use for this particular problem, that is EBS, elastic block storage, then EFS, elastic file storage, and the simple storage service S3, where these three different types of the workload related storage services we can use for the sake of the research storage of this particular problem. Then comes to the backups. So here EBS snapshots can be used, and related to the S3 Glacier can be used, and there are the different methodologies which are adopted for the sake of the backups. Even it is able to do cross-region replication, where S3 can be used it geographically at different areas, and it is a geographical redundant. So here AWS backup will store all the solutions, that is three different databases which we can adopt here, that is EBS, elastic block storage, EFS, elastic file storage, and simple storage service, that is S3. So all these three types of storage services are used for the sake of this particular database related security. Then comes to the access control and security related to the database which we are taking the data sets, that comes under the AM rules. So there are two types of the users. One is the AM user, another is the root user. Root user is the person who pays the bill to the AWS, and he will differentiate his employees, and he will give different roles of AM so that they can use only those privileged access and specific resources. The AM rules are majorly to the EC2 instance to grant them least privileged access to the specific resources, that is S3 bucket or the data sets. So here these AM rules are the major rules which are identified for the sake of the controlling access to EC2 instances and data sets. The next concept is related to the security groups, where we are going to configure the security groups to allow the SSH RDP, which will access only the specific IP addresses, that is university restrict network. Then comes to restrict traffic to specific ports. So here the different ports will be used for the sake of the storing of research publication. Then comes to the data encryption, where they will be used the KMS, key management service to encrypt the data sets that are stored in EBS, EFS and S3. So here the data encryption is related to the KMS, that is key management service, to encrypt all data sets stored in EBS, EFS and S3. So here you are going to ensure all network communications that are encrypted using SSL by TLS. Then comes to the identity federation, where you are going to use AWS Cognito or Active Directory Federation to integrate the university related, extending the identity provider, where you are going to allowing the researchers to authenticate with their institutional credentials. So this is all about the AWS, where we are going to use AM rules as well as the security groups. So this is all about the solution for that particular problem. Now we are going for the scenario number 3. So here we are going to discuss around, in this particular video we are going to discuss around 10 different scenarios related to the AWS project development on real-time environment, and in further videos we are going to discuss some more scenarios. So now we are in the third scenario, that is related to the virtual labs for students. So here SR University is wants to create a virtual labs for the students to practice the program and to uplift their skills related to any environment. So here the cost optimization, the major factors influence here are the cost optimization, multi-tenant environment and access environment. So the cost optimization is related to how you are going to use the EC2 spot instances, or by saving the plans to minimize the cost of hosting virtual labs. So the virtual labs will be hosted on EC2 instances. So you have to purchase those EC2 instances. Either it may be a EC2 spot instances. Then comes to you are going to implement and use these instances or terminate it to avoid unnecessary costs. So you are going to avoid unnecessary costs, and for that purpose you are going to terminate it. This comes under the cost optimization. Then comes to the multi-tenant environment, where the isolated student environments on the same EC2 instance to ensure the security and to prevent resource conflict. This multi-tenant environment will be used. Then comes to the access management, where SSH key pairs or access credentials for hundreds of the students related to the EC2 instance will be here related to the access management. So this is all about the problem. Here you have to understand that we are just discussing the problem and possible solution. We are not doing any type of the practical session or any type of the implementation. We are trying to understand the problem, and we are going to write the steps where we can solve that particular problem. By what steps we can solve, that all we are discussing here, not more than that. So here this is only a problem solving methodology for the different scenarios in the AWS cloud environment. So here the next step we are going to discuss is related to the virtual labs of students. So here the solution for the virtual labs is related to the cost optimization by using the EC2 spot instances or saving plans to minimize this particular cost that comes under the EC2 spot instances. So the spot instances are a cost effective option for workloads that are flexible and can be tolerate interruption. So here around 90% of saving will be done by using on-demand pricing, and for the sake of the reserving the instances of EC2 for the sake of the virtual labs. Then comes to the saving plans. So here AWS will provide different saving plans. Based on this saving plans, if you are going to use it, you are going to pay less amount for these particular labs. So SR University, it allows you, that is SR University, to pay less for this particular virtual labs by committing to the long-term commitment. Then comes to the auto scaling, which is also known as ASG, auto scaling groups. What do you mean by auto scaling? That means automatically you can down or you can up, you can be scaled as per your requirement. When the students or more students are logged in, you can scale up. When the less number of students are logged in, you can scale it down. So here, based on the auto scaling facility, you are going to get the less price for your activities. Then comes to the AWS Lambda and CloudWatch. All of you know what is the use of CloudWatch. CloudWatch will provide you the CloudWatch alarms so that you will be idle. You will set an activity. Based on that automatic activity, automatically it will be terminate the instance. Then comes to the AWS instance scheduler. So here AWS instance scheduler can also automate the starting and stopping of EC2 instance, which is based on schedule, such as running the virtual labs only during this particular hours. Then comes to the multi-tenant environments, that is around the virtual private cloud, that is VPC. Next is AMP rules. Then comes to the Amazon workplaces. Then